Well, hopefully as folks join on in, they can introduce themselves. We can go ahead and get started here. We are so delighted that you've chosen to spend your lunch break with us here this afternoon. Welcome. My name is Sarah Cardona, Deputy Director at Greenbelt Alliance, and thank you again for joining us here. This is a series highlighting climate leaders working on issues related to making our world more resilient. And we acknowledge all of the global and local challenges unfolding before us right now, and just really thank you for being here with us today, and where we can really talk about bold ways forward in particularly our climate goals. So if this is the first time you're joining us, Greenbelt Alliance is a nonprofit organization based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our mission is to educate, advocate, and collaborate to ensure the Bay Area's lands and communities are resilient to a changing climate. And again, I'm really excited to be joined here today by Dr. Jennifer Norris, Deputy Secretary of Biodiversity and Habitat at the California Natural Resources Agency. Jen is responsible for overseeing our statewide biodiversity strategy, including the California Biodiversity Collaborative. She also leads the Cutting Green Tape initiative in support of landscape scale habitat restoration. CNRA is actually right now developing a strategy to achieve the state's goal of conserving at least 30% of California's lands and coastal waters by 2030. And her colleagues at the agency are also coordinating the first statewide natural and working lands climate smart strategy to drive long-term climate actions across key California landscapes. I mean, just so much exciting things happening for us to talk to you about here today, Jen. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you, Sarah. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you. Well, we'll go ahead and dive right in, because we know that California is right now at a really critical tipping point in the climate crisis. I mean, we've got a historic drought. We already are seeing record-breaking heat waves this summer, and of course, again, unfortunately, wildfires this year, literally blazing new historic records. And also thinking about just last week, the United Nations appointed body of those global scientific experts at IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they published its most up-to-date physical understanding of the climate system and climate change, and they confirmed the world is getting hotter at a faster rate than previously thought, and that's what's really driving these extremes that we must adapt to. And so that's the context we're in. But today we're here to really talk about how biodiversity and nature connect to this climate crisis story, and what Greenbelt Alliance, as well as the state of California, what we're working on to build human and ecological resilience to climate change through what we're calling nature-based solutions. We know that at the very same time of that climate change tipping point, we're also at a tipping point in nature's ability to function and thrive, right? Again, new data this year has come out showing that we're losing species at a super rapid pace, and accelerated by human activities and climate change. So thankfully, we're here in California, and we're the first US state leading the way, joining that global campaign to protect 30% of Earth's lands and waters by 2030. To really restore our biodiversity, expand access to the great outdoors, and build climate resilience. Jen, I know that you and I met earlier this year, right as the state was announcing that 30 by 30 goal, to talk about how we could support that effort. It's so in line with Greenbelt Alliance's mission. And so I'm just so excited to have you here today for us to talk about that. And before we really get into those details, I just wanted to start by, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got into this line of work, your work at CNRA, and about this bold moment for the state of California on climate change, biodiversity, and nature.
And thanks again for having me. It's really nice way to spend the lunch hour. My story is probably like a lot of folks in our world. I got the nature hook kind of early on when I was an adolescent and trying to figure out who I was. I discovered that the outdoors really spoke to me. And it became just part of my life trajectory very early on. I just loved being outdoors. It made me feel at home, and it felt just like right, and I knew that I wanted to protect places like that. So my whole career, I did environmental policy and I did environmental science, but I've always wanted to bring those two things together. How can we use our understanding of how the natural world works to make it a better place? So that's been my life's work. I've been doing it all through graduate school and all my jobs, but this one is really sort of like it's the pinnacle of all the things that I feel like I've been working on. How do we improve our government processes? How do we work together in collaboration? What are our opportunities across all kinds of different landscapes? And 30 by 30, it's really an opportunity to accelerate conservation. That's how I see this. We already know how to do it, but this is just a turbo boost. It says, we've got a hard goal, let's start running toward it. Stop walking, let's run. And the IPCC report really, it just underscored how important it is to get on it already. We need to move faster because we are running out of time. The window is closing. And I would say, an important thing that we all need to keep in mind is nature-based solutions don't work without biodiversity. They don't function, right? So you can't have a wetland that is sequestering, that is giving you, buffer against sea level rise without organisms. You don't just throw water on dirt and call it a wetland, right? You need all the plants, all the soil organisms, all the dragonflies and the birds. All that is part of what makes that system function. I like to talk about how the ocean, some estimates 50 to 80% of our oxygen comes from the ocean, right? But it doesn't come from salt water. It comes from kelp and plankton and whales eating it. And the whole big cycle is what makes the oxygen actually work. So biodiversity and climate change, they are completely interrelated. They're not separate buckets. They're actually the same thing when we're talking about nature-based solutions.
Thank you for that. And I think that's so illuminating because sometimes we don't always talk about them that connected. And I have actually more specific questions on that to really help us unpack that. And it's not just species by species. I'm hearing from you this systems level perspective. So would love to dig into that more with you. I think one thing that we've observed by this 30 by 30 process that I know you're leading and the state is taking on is it's this turbocharge to know what we need to do and kind of do it. And you've been conducting a lot of robust stakeholder input and engagement, in this process already in a short amount of time this year. So I wanted to hang there with you for a couple more questions on that, to just hear a little bit more about, what are you learning from that? How has the CNRA been seeing and learning about the different regions across the state and the opportunities that those diverse landscapes, provide, and maybe what you're hearing people's concerns are unique to their region?
Yeah, I mean, the big theme is just there is an incredible amount of passion and commitment to conservation in California, which is just, it's uplifting and it makes us feel hopeful. So I like doing them for that reason alone. Just to have all these people come and say how much they care has been great. But the regional conversations, they're really illuminating. There is a lot of variety in how conservation gets done, what the challenges are, and what people care about in different parts of the state. And the executive order really recognized that early on, that one size isn't going to fit all. We need to be thinking across a broad array of landscapes and seascapes and ownership types. So I feel like the regional workshops have just given us more richness to that understanding. We've heard, one real big difference, right? The Central Valley it's a super important landscape that needs conservation. It's almost all in private land and mostly in agriculture, right? So that's a very different kind of challenge than thinking about the North Coast redwoods and how we would conserve those, or the coast and oceans along San Diego, right? They're just really different ecosystems, but also in terms of how people use the land and what sort of some of the ownership and interests are in different places. So that's been really helpful, and I think will be useful as we sort of scale down. This pathways document is really a framework for how we'll do our work. Mm-hmm. And then the real work happens, as it's local, right? The actual implementation, I'm not going to do it in my office. We're going to do it together out in the places that the conservation really happens, where you figure out where the places are that you really want to invest in. So I feel like that'll be a useful guide moving forward to help us understand when we go to these places what those differences are.
Mhm. Excellent, absolutely. And so talking about that local level action and that local appreciation for the diversity, right, of the landscapes, of the solutions that we'll need, kind of leads me sort of to my next question, kind of where are you landing on this as far as what are you seeing then will be the main challenges for achieving, the 30 by 30 goal? I mean, I think, maybe we might be hearing like, is 30% by 2030 even enough, and even really doable? So it's just curious to hear your your thoughts on that.
I think it's definitely doable. And I think it's not enough in the sense that I know there's the 50 by 50 goal. That's another conversation. But one important take home I would offer too is that, the 30% is very focused on adding more places to our portfolio, right? So if we already have places like, Yosemite and the San Francisco Bay Wildlife Refuge and, you name it, how do we add more places like that to our total? But there's other really important conservation that goes on that may or may not count toward our 30 by 30 that we also need to continue to invest in. So is it enough by itself? No, but it's a really important tool for helping us protect our lands in their natural state so that they can give us all the benefits that we really need.
We need now, right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, sort of, building off of that and reflecting on, as you're pointing out, I mean, we have here across California, and let's just talk specifically Bay Area, where Greenbelt Alliance is focused on. So many organizations and efforts over the years, really have actually successfully protected, millions of acres of open space, agricultural lands, again, including the work by Greenbelt Alliance, but many others. And yet we know, as you're saying, like, we need to do more. We know that there are still lands at risk of, not only wildfires, severe flooding and sea level rise, drought, all of that, but also, habitat corridors that are being lost forever to sprawling developments. So we definitely have this room to conserve and restore more, right,
Yep.
lands and waters. And one thing that I know, we've been talking with you and your colleagues about is something we're working on at Greenbelt Alliance to really identify, okay, we're calling them the Bay Area resilience hotspots, right? Where are those lands at greatest risk of those multiple climate hazards and the sprawl development risk that are adjacent to frontline communities, those communities, populations most vulnerable to climate impacts, that, if we were to channel our resources to the protection and the stewardship there, that would really make a difference, we think, in building, equitable community resilience to climate change. And so I guess my question now would be, how do you see that work that I just described, and the work of many other organizations and efforts across the Bay Area, and the state as well? How did that connect to the state's goals, and what might we be able to expect from the 30 by 30 effort? I think, some of us are wondering, how might this state process make a tangible impact, here on the Bay Area, and as you mentioned, kind of having us working together on these common goals.
You just illustrated exactly what needs to happen, right? That's the kind of implementation we need. We want to invest across the state in efforts like that, where there's local understanding of where the real needs are, and find a way to help get those places across the finish line. So in some places, in the Bay Area is a great example, the knowledge is there. Maybe it just needs the investment and the support from the state. There's other parts of the state where those kinds of coalitions haven't come together and really haven't started to figure out what needs to be done. So those investments might be more along the planning and community engagement side, where we're getting the communities that haven't had a chance to really think through what they need and have the support. So all of those things are what we're looking to invest in. And I'll just give a plug for what we're still looking for is, what is working? What are the things that work? There's a lot of conservation. Some of it's really hard and not that easy and doesn't work that well. Some of it's really good and really works. We know collaborative processes work. We know some of this higher level planning is valuable, but what are the programs the state can really invest in to make sure that we can achieve 30 by 30. And then where are the gaps? What are the things that we just don't have enough of yet that we really should create while we have this political momentum and this enthusiasm?
Excellent. Okay, so you're looking for that input. My understanding is still like right now. I know you even held a workshop last night, last afternoon. Today we have this time frame. I think it's until September 3rd, if I'm correct.
Right. So we're drafting now. We want to really get that final draft and get it on the street for review. We would love to hear from folks by September 3rd. Okay. And then if we miss that and we miss something, the draft will be out. There'll be plenty of opportunity for people to say, I forgot to put this in, and we'll add it then. But if you can get us by September 3rd, that'd be great.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, we'll a plug to everyone watching here to be able to chime in with that input. And, this kind of leads me to the next thing I wanted us to talk through a bit is something that Greenbelt Alliance has been working on to also offer up in terms of this suggestions and advocacy of where we should focus, because it's related to the connection of wildfire and nature-based solutions. I mean, we obviously, I think it was even really smoky here in downtown San Francisco this morning. We're in intense wildfire season. Dixie Fire, unfortunately, is now the largest in California history. And so we've been thinking a lot about, okay, what needs to be done differently? The status quo obviously isn't working. And one of the things that we're really excited about, we landed on in recent research, is really we have to accelerate using greenbelts to reduce our wildfire risk. Our recent research found various different types of greenbelts, natural and working lands, from open spaces and parks to even farms and ranches. They can reduce wildfire risk. They can create those natural buffers from communities and wildfires approaching. If they're properly managed, they could even reduce the size and number of extreme wildfires that threaten communities. In terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and helping purify our air quality, greenbelts do that too. So these are not only beloved outdoor places, they can be productive landscapes driving our food economy, and they're these landscapes that support the rich biodiversity that California and the Bay Area is known for. And so that will certainly be one of the things that we see is working well, that we want to accelerate as a way to build our resilience to climate change, but as a way for the state to really meet its 30 by 30 goals. And so just last sort of point on the 30 by 30 process, wondering, what are some of the themes emerging that you're thinking about that could be driving your thinking around the strategy and how to approach the bold goal of 30 by 30?
I mean, I think we really want all hands on deck. So all the above, all hands on deck, come one, come all, whatever phrase you want. The Greenbelt, clearly that's a really, one of the great strategies and approaches that works in lots of places. And private land easements and working with the federal government on expanding their protected areas. I mean, every possible, opportunity to expand conservation, we should seize, because, we don't have time to put together this nice linear sequential approach. We want to just do as many things as we possibly can to protect it while we have time.
Well, that's excellent to hear. I mean, I do, again, it's such a large and bold goal. It does sound like we're going to need to be creative about piecing together various different options for solutions. So you'll definitely be hearing from us about the types of greenbelts that we truly do think could be a really solid path forward, and the particular importance of that management piece of those landscapes to really unlock those multiple benefits. So, but just giving a quick time check here and wanting to dive more into that biodiversity climate change connection that you mentioned at the top, and would love to really learn from you. I know this is your sweet spot here. And again, I don't think it's something that all of us are always talking about or cognizant of at the same time, but we know that climate change is exacerbating the risk to biodiversity, right? To the pace and scale of how we're losing species and habitats. But then at the same time, we can see how the natural and managed ecosystems and their own biodiversity, those organisms that you mentioned, they play such a key role in the fluxes of greenhouse gases and also supporting our climate adaptation. And I wanted to share with you, I actually do, just to wind down, sometimes I just watch on Netflix those nature documentaries by David Attenborough. He's
right. Good.
He's so great, right? I love how he talks, and he just puts it so clearly. So I wanted to share with you something that really resonates with me, and then would love to hear your mantra of how you see this. But he says all across our planet, crucial connections in our natural system are being lost. The stability that we all rely upon is being lost. So what we preserve right now and the next 10 to 20 years, he even said, will determine the future of all life on Earth and ensure a future where humans and nature can thrive.
Yeah.
Wow. So
yeah, that's it right there. I mean, that's it. So, I've really been thinking about this because I feel like we've missed somehow we aren't communicating that essential piece. People hear that and they're like, yeah, that's true, but I can go to Target and get what I need. Like, they miss the point that everything that we need, like, this is everything. I was on a podcast about a week ago. It was released, and there was someone from Bears Ears talking about tribal approaches to land, and he was saying that is our medicine cabinet, that is our food, that is our farm, that is our fruit orchard, that's our church, that's our recreation area. And truly, it's ours too. We've just lost that connection. Everything we need to survive, it's only on this planet. There's no other planet to get the stuff from, right? It all comes from the earth. The oxygen comes from all the things we need to breathe come from all the things that are growing on this planet, and all of our food ultimately comes from the soil. So we have to be thinking about, we have to understand that we're really an essential part of nature. And I just think we've broken that link for so many people that it's just a really abstract concept. Mm-hmm. And so then you just offer them like a picture of a polar bear and hope that they will love it. But that's missing the story, which is that we're all connected. And so we need nature and nature needs us. Like we're part of it. We're not standing outside.
Right. So yeah.
I'm trying to find a better way to say it. I'm still practicing, but to me, it's the crux of the whole thing. And ecologists understand that intuitively. And so maybe they forget to say it because it's just so obvious, but it's not obvious to everyone.
No, it's really not. In this day-to-day that we operate in, we sometimes really lose that connection perspective. And I guess what I also find is cause for pondering and wondering is, at the same time, we can see under the changing climate conditions, we see that natural system, our ecosystems, our species are also able to adapt
right.
and shift at the same time. So I don't know, talk to me a little bit about that, and in general, what should we be doing? I'm sure there's no one silver bullet, but what do we need to really hold true, and what matters the most in this context of grappling with the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis right now?
I would say that this is why I'm so excited to be doing 30 by 30, honestly, because this to me is the single most valuable thing we can do, is to protect places from being destroyed, paved over, turned into something that is not natural. Even an empty lot where the rain can get through to the water table is better than pavement, right? So the more conservation that we can get done will allow nature to adapt. To the extent that it's possible, climate change is coming. At least these, other species that we share the planet with will have space to live. So, conservation to me is the key, and it will help us with climate change. It'll help our biodiversity, help us through this crisis. So, and all the nature-based solutions that you describe are manifestations of what that conservation should look like. Mm-hmm. More of these places that deliver multiple benefits, that do give us resilience from the effects of climate change, that help us achieve carbon neutrality, that give us access to nature, which we all need, and clean our air, clean our water. And if we do all that, the biodiversity is an essential piece of that. You can't separate that out. So you're going to be protecting it at the same time.
That's great. That's great. Well, kind of on those lines then as well, what information does the state have either, currently, or are you in the process of mapping and assessing that biodiversity richness across the state? Maybe you could, talk about the Bay Area as well, but to really demonstrate those most, those most critical areas, but maybe also those most vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that. So I don't talk about this enough, but this CA Nature that we're developing, this geographic information system, is going to be very, very valuable and super cool. So, we're taking the data that we already have. It's not a new set of data, but, the Department of Fish and Wildlife has a tremendous library of really valuable information about where we have species richness, where rare species are found, where the important habitats are. But we're linking that up with the places that are already protected in the state, according to the definition, TBD, and we'll be able to track conservation as it moves along. So you'll use the map to say, oh, here's a place we could use a green belt that will protect this important biodiversity. It's adjacent. And then the other layers are, climate change. So looking at the projections into the future, and you'll be able to overlay those, identify places that are really vulnerable to climate change in particular. And then access layers, where do we have places that are really don't have access to nature? So that gives us a way to prioritize visually where we need to work. And the idea of these, they're statewide, you can scale down. And then if you have information like you have, we're trying to design it so that you can sort of take those maps and then put your own maps on it and do your own local planning. So I think it's going to be a really valuable conversation that the whole state can have about what and where we want to do our work, and then you can use it at the regional level. It's gonna be really valuable. Yeah,
that sounds very, very beneficial. And again, kind of bringing in all of these considerations, not having that planning be kind of siloed to only looking at, biodiversity goals over here and only looking at climate resilience over here. Really bringing that holistic view together. Can you remind us of the time frame?
So someone just asked
that available.
So those are being built in parallel with the document. So the plan now is we'll release the pathways document for draft, and we'll do a demo of what those maps look like as a way to, we want them to be as functional as possible. So we're going to try to roll them out, see what we're missing, make sure they are understandable. And that will also be really important to understanding the pathways document. Because if you're thinking about like, what is conservation, you can actually go to the map and be like, oh, okay, that is in your that's out. Like, that's a way to understand that.
Great. Well, really excited to hear that. I'm looking at the chat here, 2022, 2023.
The pathways, so the draft will be out this fall, like 2 months from now, 3 months from now, and then we're finalizing it in February. And then, we'll continue to work on the maps like that. This is like 1.0. And then, we hope to include other data as we move forward, but it'll be, yeah.
Fantastic, Jen. Well, I'm doing a time check. See, this 30 minutes just went by. I just wanted to end with one final question, which is, Jen, what makes you feel hopeful about all of this? We've got these looming crises before us. So just what makes you feel hopeful and keeps you up every day, excited to dig into this work?
I'm not gonna lie, the day the IPCC thing came out, I was depressed. That was a dark day. But what makes me hopeful is people like you, honestly, people like the Greenbelt Alliance. There is so much energy and enthusiasm to do this work. I think we can get there, one. And two, 30 by 30 is something we can get excited about and work on together in a positive space. A lot of conservation is actually really challenging. And this to me is just a very positive, we can do it successful approach. So I'm hopeful because I think we've turned the narrative to one of, I think we're starting with one of hope. Like, let's reach this goal together. Let's lock arms and use our power to make this happen. So I feel hopeful just because people like you care and are engaged and excited to work with me.
Well, that's excellent to hear, Jen. No, thank you. We're really excited to dig into this with all of you, and why we wanted to have you here, create this space to talk with you and share more with our network. So I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. I know we could have even more to talk about, and so we'll have to do this again.
Yes, that's it.
but we recorded this. It's available on our YouTube channel for folks who want to learn more. And here you'll see up on the screen are ways that you can learn more about what the state is doing right now. The state of California have a lot of links and resources, and we'll be looking out for even more as the drafts unfold that you shared, Jen. So thank you so much for all of your work that you're advancing, and we absolutely look forward to partnering with you on making real change on the ground locally. We do that here at Greenbelt Alliance every single day to protect the Bay Area's natural and working lands while also creating those thriving communities. And that is really made possible by you who are watching here today. So please consider donating to us, which you can do securely on our website at greenbelt.org/donate. And please continue to stay plugged in to what Greenbelt Alliance is working on and up to. Check out our website, greenbelt.org. And again, sign up for more future webinars like this and information from hopefully Jen and many others to come. But best of luck as things are moving forward. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great to chat with you.
Thank you, Sarah. I enjoyed it. Take care.
Same here, Jen. All right, take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you.